in Applied Linguistics, AIRiAL, which you all can attend by September, right?
Last week in September.
Last weekend of September. And he's going to talk to us about a comparative study of AI generated and published research abstracts. So give it up to Allison.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you. And I'm really happy to see so many of you come out to see me here on this rainy day. So thank you very much. As Larissa mentioned, so my research focuses on language assessment and technology. Today, I'm going to be talking about a corpus study, and corpus linguistics informs language assessment, it informs NLP, it informs AI, so this is relevant. It's also a very relevant topic about AI writing essays, writing topics that are used for language assessment, and whether that is a threat to how we assess language or not. So before I begin, I want to talk a little bit about AI, because we have so many different definitions. What is AI? How do we define it? And when ChatGPT came out, that was when a lot of people were introduced in wow factor about what AI is. And that is actually generative AI, but most people are calling that AI. And AI is much more than generative AI or chatbots. It's also recommendation systems or AI that can play games like chess. And it's also fraud detection. And there's so many different aspects of how we apply AI. It's a broad area. And so yes, you can report. So I just want to go through some of these different types of AI briefly. And so the first type of AI was ANI, artificial narrow intelligence. And these are systems that were built to do one task, but they were built to do that one task very well. And so you may have heard about playing chess against humans and beating the human, playing Go. So this is one type of AI, and it's still a type of AI that's being used across different fields. The second type is artificial capable intelligence, and that's where we are right now. It's capable of doing some things, but not capable of doing others. And it's good at some things, but it's not good at others. And we're still trying to hopefully improve it so it is much better, for better or for worse. The next type is AGI, general intelligence, and this is where most of the companies are trying to focus their research. This was the goal, to create a system that could do many different tasks, one model, and do them all very, very well, but we're not there yet. And then we have artificial superintelligence. And this is very far in the future. I don't know if we'll be around by then. This is AI that does things that we probably can't even imagine or think of right now. And so, as I mentioned, we're just here in the beginning phases. And this is a timeline or a map for the phases going this way, for the phases of AI. And so generative AI is one type of AI, and there are different types of AI for creating images and for recommending your next Netflix movie. So today I'd like to talk about this study looking at generating research abstracts using AI. And so the situation is that we have a lot of knowledge that we as humans are creating, and we need to disseminate this knowledge. However, many of the academic publications are in English, and that has implications for L2 English researchers, or even someone growing up with English as their first language. Academic language is another language that we need to learn, and it's not something that we learn growing up. So academic language is variable, but it also has conventions. So if we're thinking about having AI help us, can it help us to write AI research articles? Solution may be automated text generation, or we might call this natural language generation. So how would we use AI to help us to write a research abstract? Will it write us for us, or will it help us write the abstract? It could produce a first draft, and then we could revise. That's what some people have been suggesting. It could also provide a model, and then we could write our own. That's another way that AI could help us, instead of writing it for us, could help us write. Either way, whether it writes for us or helps us write, it might help us write faster so that we could share our knowledge quicker and with a wider audience. It might improve access to publishing opportunities and shorten the time from submission to publication. So if you have experience publishing, and you'll see this when you submit, you'll get comments back. Some of those comments are on the content, on the methodology, but some of the comments are on the language, right? And so AI is very good at correcting grammar and spelling. Let's use it for that. But how should we use it to help us actually write our research articles or our research abstracts? And so there's been a lot of research in trying to detect AI writing, and those have not been successful because they have not been 100% correct. And over the past year or so, we've been thinking of different policies in education, higher education. Should we have a policy that you cannot use AI? Should we have a policy that you can use it for certain tasks, but not other tasks? But what are the consequences then if we have a policy? If we have an AI detector that is not 100% correct, and it detects something that may be questionable, what happens? Do we follow up? And does that affect the grade, or does that affect consequences in other ways? So it's not straightforward whether we should have policies or how we should use AI or when we should use AI. This is something for us as humans, as humanity, to decide when we're using it, why we're using it, and how we're using it. So the study that I'd like to share with you today that I'm working on is exploring the capability of AI to generate research abstracts for academic journal publication. And this is focusing on publications in applied linguistics and publications in English. And this builds on the rhetorical moves research by Swales and Feak, and the research abstracts as a part genre, the genre being the research article. So the research questions that I'm working with are, does the structural organization, meaning the rhetorical moves, of AI-generated research articles differ from published abstracts? Also, does the language of AI-generated research abstracts differ from published abstracts? Does it, and how? So I'm first going to talk about the data set and the method of generating AI abstracts and data preparation, how I analyze the data. And as I mentioned, I'm using Swales and Feak rhetorical moves analysis. Software I'm using is NCONC 359, as well as ChatGPT 4.0. These are the journal articles. Calico Journal, Studies in Second Language Acquisition, Language Testing, and Linguistic Landscape, as a sample of journal publications in applied linguistics. So it's a broad range of articles. And this is a smaller sample. I selected 15 articles from each journal. So each subcorpus has 60 journal articles. And then I created the AI abstracts from these articles for additional 60, so 120 in total. The inclusion criteria for the articles that I selected were that they were from peer-reviewed journals, and that they were from the latest issue of each journal, and also that they were empirical articles and in English. So for the first stage, I selected the articles, identified the journals, and downloaded the PDFs through our library. And I removed the abstract from each journal article and separated those. So I had the articles without their abstracts, and then the articles, just the abstracts from each of the articles. And the articles, the abstracts, were saved in a Google document for coding. Then in stage 2, to generate the AI abstracts, this went through prompt engineering and text generation using ChatGPT 4.0. And I used 2 prompts for this phase. First of all, I uploaded the text readable article without the abstract and asked ChatGPT, what is this article about? And that was to make sure that the ChatGPT knew which article I wanted to produce the abstract for, and also to put that into memory. So it had that as the memory. Remember, this is asking it to produce an abstract for a particular journal article. So it was very relevant to know that journal, that article. The second prompt was journal specific. And it varied only in the name of the journal and the range of words. So I looked at the average word length for each of the abstracts, and also looked at the journal specifications because different journals had different requirements for the length of their abstracts. And so that would be relevant if a human were creating an abstract for a journal, they would need to follow those same guidelines to write the abstract, 200 words, 250. So prompt one, what is this article about? Prompt two, then, for example, for Calico journals, articles, you are an academic researcher preparing to submit the uploaded document to Calico Journal for peer review. Please write an abstract between 190 to 200 words for the document. And then similar for linguistic landscape, just changing the name of the journal and the word range. And I created a persona based on some of the research that's being done in prompt engineering. And this is from one of the tips from MwALT: treat AI like a person, but tell it the person you want it to be. And that way it can generate more specifically for that context. And here you see language testing journal and studies in SLA. The only thing that changed was the name of the journal and the word length range. So once I had the abstracts from the published articles and then the AI generated abstracts, then coding needed to be done following the Swales and Feak framework. And this was done in Google Docs. And so all of the abstracts then were saved in TXT files once they were coded, and then the analysis was done. That was stage 3. And I'll explain a little bit more detail about this process when I get to that point. So here's the corpora composition or corpus composition with subcorpora, depending on how you look at it. So the number of abstracts, there are 15 from each article, from each journal, and the token counts. You see they're very similar. Calico had very similar token counts. Linguistic landscape, similar. The one that differed the most was studies in SLA. And here are some statistics for the mean token count and mean sentence count. And so looking at the framework that I'm going to be using and the traditional research abstract, there are about 5 moves that I'm looking at. So if we consider that each sentence takes up at least 1 or 2 moves, we're looking at around 7, 8 sentences per abstract. And that's in line with the standard. So you'll notice from this table that the mean token counts are very similar, but the standard deviations are different. So there's greater standard deviation for the published abstracts, which means there's more variation in humans. We're very, and similar with the sentence count. And just some visuals for the mean token counts. You see that studies in second language acquisition varied more than the others. And so that might have something to do with the prompting and the text range. And you can see that the orange line is the AI generated abstract. So even though I gave it a range, in general, it tended to reach the upper range area. So it wanted to produce more language, which is not surprising. Here's the mean sentence count. So this is the framework that I am applying for analysis. This is the rhetorical move analysis by Swales and Feak. Raise your hand. Are you familiar with this framework? Have you used it? Yes. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is part of genre analysis, discourse analysis by work by Swales and Feak. And so this might look familiar because it resembles a research article. And this is their analysis of studying many research abstracts. So research abstracts are a summary of your research article. And they found these different rhetorical moves or functions for the different sentences in a research abstract. And it follows the structure and organization of a research abstract. So what do you do with a research abstract? You start with an introduction. So move one is the background, introduction, or the situation. What do we know about the topic? Why is the topic important? The next is present research and purpose. So what is the study about? In this case, I've coded with these M1, M2, M3 in each of the abstracts. The third move is the methods, materials, subjects, and procedures. We might ask, how was it done? How was the study done? The fourth move is results and findings, and then asking the question, what was discovered? What did you find out? And then finally, move 5, which is discussion, conclusions, implications, recommendations. What do the findings mean? And their significance. What are the implications for the finding? And this is very important to situate the research in the broader field. This is what it looked like when it was coded or annotated. The brackets show the different moves. And this is easier for a computer to read and sort through. As humans, this might be easier for us to see with color coding. And this way, you can see that some of the moves might have 2 or 3 sentences, where others only have 1. So 2 graduate students helped me with the coding of the moves, annotating, and you can see that the agreement between the annotators for the published abstracts was lower. So it was more difficult to identify what that move was in the human written published abstracts than it was in the AI generated abstracts. Although surprisingly or not surprisingly for AI generated abstracts, it's not 100% agreement. So there was still some disagreement on which move was produced, even when AI generated the moves. So let's take a look at the results. And we're first going to look at the organization. So we can see this is the aggregate, so all of the abstracts together. The dark blue or purple is published and the light color is AI generated abstracts. And so we can notice right away from the AI generated abstracts that for moves 2, 4, and 5, those moves were generated every single time. Whereas there's some variety with the published abstracts. We also see from move 1 that move 1 was produced more frequently for the published abstracts than it was for AI generated abstracts, which doesn't follow the pattern. And so here the table is showing the same data as the bar chart. I would think that move 2 would be 100% also because it's telling what the study is about, but it's not always the case with human published abstracts. Looking at a more finer grained perspective, we can take a look at the different journals. So Calico, Linguistic Landscape, Language Testing, and Studies in Second Language Acquisition all have different patterns, but we start to see some similarities. Linguistic Landscape and Language Testing have similar patterns for move 1, where human published abstracts have more frequently used move 1 than the AI abstract generated by AI, which means that AI might think that within this journal, it's not as important or it's not following the pattern that it would think fits that journal. Calico, Linguistic Landscape, and Language Testing all follow that pattern, but notice studies in SLA, AI ChatGPT generated more move 1 than the published abstracts. So it does not follow the pattern there as well. So there's more variation when we take a look at the individual journals. But then notice 15, 15, 15, 15, 15. So that's generating those moves for all of the moves in those journals. There was also some variation in the sequence of moves. So we would think that we might see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But that's not always the case. And if you take a look at the research on move analysis for research articles, sometimes we do not have all of the moves included. Sometimes there's only 4, sometimes there's fewer. But in the published abstracts, analyzing them, there is some variation in sequence. So we might find that the author starts with move 3, which is the methodology, and then they talk about move 2, which is the purpose, and then they move back to move 3 before moving on to the findings. And similarly, reverse that, move 2, which is the purpose, go into methods, but then go back to purpose before going to findings. That's a 3-move sequence. We also see 4-move sequences, which is results, discussion, back to results, and then discussion. Purpose, methodology, purpose, and then methodology. So there's variation from move to move. And these are not just, these could be 1 sentence each, or they could be multiple sentences each. This was coded just for the different moves. So those were published abstracts. The AI abstracts only had 1 sequence variation, and that was move 2 before move 1. So they said, this is what I'm studying, and this is the context, and this is why. So that was a variation. And that happened many, many times. So let's move on to the language analysis in these moves. And I'm going to go through these 1 move at a time. But before we get to the moves, just taking a look at frequency lists, you see that they look fairly similar for the frequently used words in each of the subcorpora. On the left is the published abstracts, and on the right is the AI-generated abstracts. With one difference here, we see these keywords findings and research showing up as frequently used in the AI-generated abstracts. And after running a bigram analysis, I thought it was interesting that we see in published abstracts, but we don't see those in the AI-generated abstracts. So this study and this study are more frequent. So that might have to do with the style. The analysis of something is what a human might write, but AI might change it into a noun phrase. Taking a look at the top 20 content words, I was happy to see that language and linguistic was the most frequently used word, content word. Although we do see study frequently in the AI-generated linguistic landscape corpus, and then linguistics. So then we see results, findings, studies, and that's what I'm going to focus on for this study. So moving on, taking a look at these words: study, results, findings, and research, which are naming the genre. Taking a look at their collocations with verbs, and in this slide, we're just taking a look at verb lemmas, and not the word forms. You can see there is some variation here in the verbs that are generated as collocates of these words: study, research, findings, and results. Can you see the colors? Yeah. So the blue is published and the gray is AI generated. So you can see that those verbs that have both the blue and the gray, those have the similar verb collocates, but those that are just having one color, gray or blue, are collocates just with that AI generated or that published abstract collocate. So if you think about when you're writing, what verbs do you use with these nouns? We see results underscore and highlight in the AI generated abstracts, or results provide in the published abstracts. And so there's more overlap with study, and there's less overlap with research. We don't see any overlap here with common verb collocates. So I'm going to go on and take a look at each move. And just to clarify how I've approached this, I'm looking at just this first sentence in each move. You notice that some of those moves have multiple sentences, just the first sentence, and then also just the sentence initial phraseology. So not the whole move itself. There's a lot of further study that can be done with this. So these are examples of published article moves, move one. And you can see it starts off with extensive and repeated language exposure or research has indicated as the background or context. And I know this is small, but I think that you can start to see some of the patterns, hopefully. I'm going to pause here for a moment. Can you take a look and see what patterns are emerging? Is it too small? Too small. No. Corpus linguistic students will be.
Yeah, I'll leave it in a second.
ChatGPT loves using WILD. They love starting sentences.
Okay, so.
While is produced with AI generated abstracts, but not in the published abstracts, right? How many of you start with sentences with while? Sometimes,
Rare.
rarely. So let's take a look here.
Someone in the chat says ChatGPT also loves beginning with the.
Determiners, yes. Mhm. And in this case, it does. This is move one. Remember, this is the background. We're going to see different patterns depending on the move because the different moves have different language. And so here I've highlighted the words that I'm focusing on: research, studies, and as you mentioned, while. So some of the findings from move one that I've come up with is genre naming. As I mentioned, I'm focusing on studies and research is present in both published and AI generated abstracts, but in the initial position in PAs, right? Published abstracts, because while is shown in AI generated abstracts. Published abstracts also include that clauses where the AI abstracts did not. Some of these findings you may see if you go back then after I point them out. So examples are research has indicated that lexical richness, or the AI abstracts, while prior research has predominantly focused on. Also, I hope that you start to notice this, that AI loves adverbs. And so it proves research has predominantly focused and has extensively examined, whereas the published abstracts do not include those. And then there's frequent patterns that emerge in the AI abstracts more than the published abstracts, which has more variation. So this is a theme that you're going to see. There's a lot more variation in human abstracts than in the AI abstracts. It's more systematic, more formulaic. So move two, this is an example, and you notice that they have some genre naming here. This study investigates, this study examines. And when we take a look at the concordance lines, it becomes very clear what's going on here. There's very little variation in the AI generated abstracts. This study, this study, this study, this study, this study, with following with the reporting verb. Whereas we have the current study and the study investigated. Notice then that the published abstracts also use the past tense of the verb, whereas AI generated abstracts use the present tense all the time. So the published abstracts have more variation. We'll see that quite a bit. There's more variation in verb tense with genre naming, but the AI abstracts follow the general rule of the present tense in this move. And so the question is, should we be using only present tense if this is the general rule? Should we be following the model set forth by AI generated abstracts? Or should we continue with our variation using past tense verbs in this? I think that takes more exploration and see what discipline or what journal you're writing for. Published abstracts authors also use the past tense, as I mentioned there. So move three, this is methods, and I was surprised here how short they are, because when I've written abstracts in the past, I tried to put everything in, right, and I had to cut back a lot. So taking a look at the concordance lines, we see participants we see instruments, but we also see drawing on theory and frame. So grounded in the multimodal social, so that's looking at the theory, but AI generated abstracts highlight the theoretical foundations initially much more than published abstracts. So there's more variation in published abstracts with initial focus on participants, data, theory, or methods, whereas the AI generated abstracts have greater focus on the theoretical frameworks. And also sentence initial gerunds are used more frequently in the AI generated abstracts. A couple more to go. The MwALT, this is the results and findings. So you'll see some similar patterns here. Findings indicate, right? We do see more similar results in published abstracts, but the AI generated abstracts are by far more systematic and formulaic. So more variation in the published abstracts. And we also see the analysis and analyses, which we do not see in the AI generated abstracts. So MwALT, there's more variation in initial noun phrase. It finds that analyses show that, and also varying verb tense. High frequency of findings and results indicate and findings reveal in the AI generated abstracts. And there's discourse markers in the published abstracts, which we do not see in AI generated abstracts. So there's quite a bit of style variation. And then finally, MwALT. This is the discussion, conclusion, implications, and recommendations. Here's just some examples of what they may look like from published abstracts. And these are the concordance lines. And you can see that there's the formulaic language that we expect from AI generated text. But also it varies. I was surprised to see it argues in the AI generated text. So there is some variation. I don't know if we would classify that as hallucination or variation. Obvious sentence initial genre naming. There are differences in the reporting verb use, and the published abstracts include discourse markers that are not found in the AI generated abstracts. So does the structural organization of AI generated abstracts differ in published abstracts? There's more variation in the rhetorical moves. The AI abstracts are more systematic, and they include more. However, the published abstracts include MwALT more frequently than in the AI generated abstracts. And there's more variation in the sequence than there is in the AI generated abstracts. There are differences between these two corpora regarding language as well. Differences in genre naming, the use of that clauses, reporting verb use and tense, adverb use, and discourse markers. Some limitations. This was a small sample size. There are no significance tests yet. The published abstracts may have more than one author. And in many cases, since these are more recent journal articles, one of those authors may have been AI. That depends on the policy of the journal. But even if journals have policies, we're humans, we need to make sure that it's being followed or not. The annotation conventions, we need to have high agreement in how we're annotating them. And there's also prompt variation, which will affect the AI text generation. So I use a prompt as a persona, but if you change that persona, if you make it more specific to who you are as a researcher, as an author, it might change the prompt that it generates. As AI learns more about us, it's going to write more in our style. And so this is one study applying a framework for evaluation, but how we use AI changes the output so much that this is a moving target, because every time we create text with generative AI, it's going to be different for each one of us. Right now, it's very systematic, but that's going to change as we tell it to change more. So we still have some questions that we need to answer. Can AI generate research abstracts or structured research abstracts? How well can it generate them? When and why should it generate them are probably the more important questions. So when should it publish all of the MOOCs? How similar should academic language be across published texts? What is the appropriate voice and style for academic published norms? And what does abstract generation from an author's own text require a citation? These are questions that we need to discuss as humans and agree upon as humans. I have a few more minutes. I wanted to talk about the AIRiAL conference coming up at the end of September at Teachers College. This is an annual conference on artificial intelligence research and applied linguistics. And so we have presentations from many different countries, as well as many different states represented in the United States. And it's a 2-day conference at Teachers College. So go ahead and scan the barcode if you'd like more information, or you could follow us on, I think we're at LinkedIn now. So I have a few more minutes. Can I talk about another topic, or should we take questions? What would you like?
Would you like to do? Yeah, we can take some questions, but if you want to like.
Let's take a few questions, and I have a couple slides to if that question comes up.
Yeah. You got a question? Especially the purpose class.
Purpose.
Do you have a question?
Go ahead.
Right, so as I was following our presentation, I noticed that my way of speaking and also my writing somehow relate to the AI generated. That might be the reason that the way I learned English back in my country, like I have a different first language. So it might have an impact. And the resources I used in my learning process, that also similar to the way AI currently generates. But still, I need to recognize that time I learned English, AI was not invented, like because I learned English maybe 20 years back starting. So now I am in a kind of danger. Even I'm writing genuinely, like you mentioned that while I frequently notice that I start sentences using while, moreover, however, nevertheless. So those are the things, those are the charms I learned, and it is kind of inbuilt right now. And AI now using that one. So in future, the time I will publish academic writing, I'm in a kind of risk that despite being genuine, I might be considered as a kind of who's a right person. Right? So what's the remedy of that?
The remedy for that. So this is the same answer I think I keep coming back to regarding AI is that all of the AI problems we have are actually human problems. And that's how we as humans understand how to work with AI or believe what AI should do. You're asking about whether you write like AI and if it's being flagged as AI or not. I think we're going to have different varieties of language, and hopefully we'll see different varieties of AI language as well. And so I think your writing won't be AI writing, it'll be just one of a variety of writing, right? And so, but I think has a bigger question about what is academic writing? And that's what I mean by a human answer. What do we want to follow? What are the standards that we as humans have put on academic writing? So is it more prescriptive or a descriptive approach to what academic writing is?